Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Michelle Cusano, and on behalf of the Global Wellness Institute Consulting Best Practices Initiative, I welcome you to today's webinar featuring Prospect Farms. Our presenter today is Prospect Farms founder, Thomas Arders. Thomas, we're really excited to hear what you have to share. So let's get started and welcome to who just chimed in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you for having me. And very excited to be here presenting with you all. We look at this as a journey. I know that the topic is navigating CBD, but it's just one single facet of the entire scope of what the journey really is in the course of wellness and wellness products. If you wouldn't mind jumping to the next slide.
Sure. There we go.
So when we think about navigating CBD, we first want to stop and consider what questions we should be asking. And beyond the what is more so the why. Why is it important? Why is it impactful? Because so often we overlook the why. And I think that is critical for us to understand what products we should be working with, what products we want to work with, and the impact that those products will equally have in our use of them. And we look at essentially four pillars in all of these considerations. The pillars being ingredients, and then their associated sourcing, and then the associated trust with what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing, and the transparency associated. And I'll walk you through that as we continue our journey here. Okay. So we'd like to think about this as a holistic approach. So for example, representing Prospect Farms, we're a wellness company, a vertically integrated company located in Midcoast, Maine, and we're fortunate to put ourselves into a position of considering this wellness process as a seed to store concept. And I share that with you because it's a very interesting consideration, a very impactful consideration as you equally consider the industry. A lot of times we approach these new and novel concepts in a very newfound capacity. And unfortunately, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And it's important that we have the confidence to ask the right questions and the right context to know what to ask and what is even possible to ask and learn over the course of time. So first things first, I think it's a beautiful saying that famous William Shakespeare saying, "A rose by any other name would smell as sweet." What's in a name? CBD takes on many names, and it can sometimes be confusing, and they all equally mean something a little bit different, something impactful. We believe very much in a full spectrum product. Full spectrum means the entire spectrum, the entire array, all of the natural beneficial compounds that exist in the hemp plant, and that they're preserved in the extraction process so that it's the truest and most natural representation of the hemp plant itself. Then you have other versions that you'll very commonly see. You'll see terms like broad spectrum, even distillate. Distillate tends to be a variation of broad spectrum, and all the way to the other end of that spectrum, isolate. So what are these things and what do they mean? Think of this as all, some, and none, meaning all of the cannabinoids, all of the beneficial compounds in a full spectrum. Broad spectrum means that some things have been removed. It's a broad capture, but not a full capture. So that's where we say some, because unfortunately, some things have been removed, whether it's individual compounds such as cannabinoids, whether it's individual compounds such as terpenes, which contribute to the physiological effects in the aroma, which we'll get into, or it might also simply refer to the THC compound. And it's important to make a distinction because a lot of times there has been a stigma and a negative connotation with the THC compound or THC molecule, delta-9 tetrahydrocarbinol. And that is the basis around a lot of the regulatory framework that we have been experienced, particularly in the United States, and what they've framed a lot of these regulations around. Now, the compliant level is measured by mass, and that's 0.3% on a dry weight basis or less would deem the product to be compliant at state and federal levels. Now, a lot of times there's this connotation that THC can be bad, but the reality is it's actually there's incredible research that shows the efficacy and benefits associated with that compound along with all the other compounds. Because when all these compounds work together synergistically, it's known as the entourage effect. Think of it as many links to the fence. And then you have on the other spectrum, you have isolate. Isolate means only the CBD molecule remains. It's literally been isolated out of the mixture. And all of the other peripheral and secondary benefits have been now removed from the process. And anytime we think about removing beneficial compounds, you're left with something that's very simply not as beneficial. It's the very nature of it. And there's a lot of research that speaks to these things. And that's why a lot of big box retail and a lot of published research has come out to very clearly demonstrate and show that full spectrum is so much more beneficial physiologically than broad spectrum, and incrementally so over isolate. That's why Sephora, for example, has a policy where they focus specifically on full spectrum offerings and have moved specifically away from isolate-based offerings. So the name is very important because that stands for so much more behind that process. And the F. Scott Fitzgerald phrase of "don't forget who you are and where you come from," because not all things are created equal. So even though it says full spectrum CBD or broad spectrum CBD or isolate, where it comes from, how it's produced, and having the validation associated is incredibly important. Speaking to, for example, our seed to store process, we are able to manage and have visibility into every aspect of what we do, all the way from the seeds themselves and the genetic selection that we undergo to produce a beautiful plant and associated future product, all the way through the cultivation process. The picture here you see, for example, is the view right outside my door, which is so beautiful and so wonderful. But it speaks to the transparency because we can literally point to the plants, we can point to the fields. And this way we know that when we send out for independent labs, which we'll get into, we know exactly what is in that plant, more specifically, what's not in that plant. So having that supply chain visibility, working with brands, working with products that can speak to something more than just saying this has CBD. Because the truth is, CBD, especially in a spa setting, tends to not be more than about 1% of that product. And when you think about it, the other 99% of that product matters too. In fact, it matters a great deal. So having insight into that supply chain and having that validation of ingredients and validation of the CBD itself is incredibly impactful. And that's why we take such great pride, for example, for our own particular business, that everything we do is here on our farming complex. And we're able to have that visibility and stand behind what we do. And whomever you partner with and whatever products you consider, it's equally important. Michelle, if you wouldn't mind. So as we think about this, going back to the comment of 1%, CBD is a beautiful, impactful, physiologically beneficial ingredient, but it's just one ingredient and it's just 1%. All the other ingredients, the other 99%, that matters. So when we think about this as a wellness journey and not just a CBD journey, it's because we look at these things, these products, as botanically forward wellness products as a whole, because there's so much more that goes into it. Now, when you're looking at products, we highly stress and recommend that look at everything else too, not just the CBD. For example, in topical products, it's generally a higher concentration of CBD. So just for simple math, 95% of the product matters too. And you look at our products as an example, just to give you a bit of a framework of what you can expect and the standards that you should hold everyone accountable to is what else is going into that product that's going to help your clients, your patients, your partners. What else is in there that you can stand behind and say, this is here for a reason, not just this was a cheap carrier oil to make sure that this is able to transmit the other active ingredients as well. So just going back to that, so there's for example, in our product, there's 17 beneficial botanically forward ingredients that go into it. Most products have one or two. So knowing the difference and more specifically the why that's the case is so incredibly powerful and important as you navigate potential partners and potential products. What is being contributed to help provide some stress relief or targeted pain relief. Now, focusing on that for a moment, for us, the reason why you see so many icons there, those are all individual icons of fruits, vegetables, plants What is common amongst them all is that they all have compounds known as terpenes. Terpenes exist naturally in the hemp plant as well. These terpenes are things that give or promote a physiological benefit and contribute and give an aroma or a taste to the products that you're working with. Now, I'm sure we're all very familiar with lavender. Lavender is very calming, it's very relaxing, it's very sedative. 40% of the lavender plant, give or take, is made up of a single compound, a single terpene called linalool. In fact, eucalyptus, which is also a very, very impactful essential oil that we commonly work with, 90% of eucalyptus is made up of eucalyptol, a single terpene. These are the individual compounds that we choose to work with so that we can steer our products in the right direction to support the wellness needs as a whole for our clients. And I think that's what every brand should hold themselves accountable to and what's important to consider. Michelle, if you wouldn't mind. So we think about the trust and transparency side of it. So beyond the ingredients and the promoted effects, we think about a little bit deeper, the trust and transparency. Why can I have the trust and the confidence that CBD is impactful? Why do I want to incorporate that into my wellness routine? Well, there's incredible research out there. These are two specific published research papers around that very concept. So the first is titled Cannabidiol and its Analogs, a review of the effects on inflammation. And the second is Cannabidiol for pain treatment, focus on pharmacology and mechanism of action. These seminal research papers speak to the very specifically evaluated therapeutic applications that exist with CBD, notably and most specifically the anti-inflammatory effects, which, as we know, it is theorized that 80% of all the ailments essentially stem from an inflammatory response. And more specifically, that can also equally be a direct cause of pain development, and there's potentially long-lasting analgesic effects that can come from CBD itself. And these terpene compounds that are also included, that we specifically include even in more concentrations, contribute to things like antimicrobial behavior, antibacterial behavior, anti-inflammatory behavior, and even analgesic behavior. So all these things work synergistically together to end up at a wellness product that is going to promote a certain physiological benefit for your clients and your customers. Moving on to the next slide, we think about again, further into the trust and the transparency of what we're doing. And I know a lot of concerns that are typically brought about are, well, if I'm working with these products on a daily basis, using your hands versus gloves as a barrier, what is the effect? What is the consideration? What should I know? So we think about this as a transference concept, where it's most acutely evaluated through the pharmacokinetic or PK trials of cannabidiol. The most significant study was conducted in 2019. And the reason why these are more recent studies is because of the regulatory framework that was very prohibitive for so many decades. But they evaluated in 2019 to specifically look at different dosages on a daily basis, anywhere from 1,500 to 6,000 milligrams of CBD. And I'll put that in concept in a moment. And also multiple dosages as well of 750 and 1,500 milligrams. And usually what happens through these types of studies, as you're probably familiar, usually people drop out. Usually there's an adverse event that causes a concern, and sometimes the studies can be brought to fruition. Sometimes they're brought to fruition without everyone finishing or concluding their particular contributions. But the safety of this study is so supported that every single person who participated completed their trial arms and were analyzed as planned. And it was determined that CBD was generally well tolerated, and that any adverse events that might have been experienced, which would typically be nausea or similar, and a lot of that times it also depends on what else is in the product. If it's CBD is mixed with a lot of oils that you're ingesting, understandably that might also cause some nausea. But none were serious, none were severe, and the safety and PK profile supports even twice daily administration of CBD, which speaks to the safety of working with these particular products. Michelle? Further about trust and transparency. Prospect Farms, as an example, has engaged independent research groups such as Radical Science. We actually helped participate in the largest study to scientifically evaluate the impact of CBD on sleep. And we also participate in the largest real-world evidence study to determine the effectiveness of CBD products. These clinical studies help to shed light on the industry, shed light on something that hasn't been fully understood or fully digested by the consuming public, to understand, A, is it safe? B, more specifically, is it effective? So I think when you look at this as a consideration for partners, brands, understanding what kind of engagement that they have made to ensure that what they're sharing with you, what they're providing you, is truly natural medicine, and more specifically is built with the concept of wellness in mind, and not just because it has one beneficial ingredient, but because the entire product, the entire offering, the entire product line is meant to enhance and promote physiological benefits for all the consumers of those products. And I think that that's really impactful, because previous to recent months, most evaluation has always been on single compounds or things in a lab. I think when Prospect Farms took a giant leap of faith by saying, here's our product, tell us if this is effective, tell us if this is safe. And I think that's an impactful statement for us to make as a brand. And I equally think other brands should be held to a similar standard, and we should all hold those brands to a similar standard of transparency and trust as a foundation of any partnership. So I think that's incredibly important to consider. Michelle? And just speaking to the effects of what those promoted benefits mean, what does that translate to? And just through this, there was a statistically significant, clinically meaningful result that was derived from all of this evaluation. In fact, 74%, the extreme majority of those who participated, didn't just experience a better sleep experience, but it was realized to be a total better quality of life through improved sleep. So it wasn't just a modicum better, it was so significant that it was clinically meaningful and statistically significant. And I think that just speaks to the safety and the trust of not only CBD-based products and wellness products as a whole, but the industry and the participants associatedly as well. Michelle? So lastly, I think it's important to consider even further going back to the sourcing and then simultaneously the trust and transparency associated, because there is more to a product than just CBD. And as a consequence, there should also be more testing involved than just validating that CBD is there. More specifically, more than validating that it's federally compliant. Because right now, regulations only require brands to say they're compliant with federal law. They do not require anybody to consider anything else beyond that. And there is so much more to consider. Mycotoxins, bacterial contaminants, heavy metals, pesticides, all of these things can potentially be included, and that's a concern. And looking at the certificates of analysis, this independent research to prove, to validate that these harmful toxins are not included in that product is what we believe to be a critical requirement, not just a recommendation. And not only that, a lot of times, unfortunately, there is a simple understanding of pass or fail. Pass doesn't necessarily mean perfect. Pass doesn't necessarily mean good, because we've seen through our exposure with the industry, there could be detectable levels of various heavy metals like lead and arsenic, as surprising and as shocking as that might be. So when we say truly clean and truly green, we mean that there's non-detectable, non-traceable amounts whatsoever of these harmful toxins. And that's a standard that we believe is critical to any evaluation of a brand or product. Michelle? So if you can see here, these are the things that you want to look for. Non-detectable, zero consideration of any of these harmful compounds. Not, if you see a number is bad. A number means there's some element. It might be a small enough number to pass on a technical basis, but not necessarily to a level where you're comfortable. I don't think any of us are comfortable saying, I'm comfortable with this amount of arsenic in our products. I think the answer is always emphatically, I want zero. I want non-detectable. And that's the standard that we hold ourselves to, and that we encourage others to meet that level of standard as well. That's the independent research that is very important. And if you only see a cannabinoid analysis, ask for more. Say you want to see these other research analyses, heavy metals, pesticides, volatile organics, residual solvents. All those things are important to understand. Michelle? You can skip the next one as well. That's just a blown up picture of the heavy metals. So again, pesticides, these things, you want to see ND, non-detectable, 0, not just pass, it needs to be perfect. It needs to be as perfect as literally possible because that's the standard that we can achieve and that's the standard that we should achieve. Michelle? So just again, these residual solids, when you go through the extraction process of producing the CBD itself, it can go through some mechanical processes and some solvent-based processes. So again, this is a critical element to see that there's 0 detectable levels of these compounds. Michelle? So beyond all of this, we want to think about, in addition to the why, I think there's a consideration to the economic benefits. CBD and these botanically forward products that we're able to produce to contribute to the wellness industry do represent an incredible revenue opportunity. Based on the research that Global Wellness Institute was kindly able to provide and share with us, the North American wellness economy has grown to over $1.3 trillion as last measured in 2020. This research just came out in February. And if you think about where the spa and wellness community sits, it accounts for only 1.3% of that entire picture, which just speaks to how much room there is to grow and be a greater consideration of the community and of the wellness routine. Because this is a cornerstone, as you all are very well equipped to understand, how impactful that can be in someone's daily life. And when we think about the upcharges of anywhere from $35 to as much as even in excess of $75 per treatment, the cost could be in the single digits. That's something impactful to add as an accretive opportunity and not a cannibalizing opportunity. So not only is it an efficacious consideration for wellness, there's also an economic consideration as well that is equally impactful. Because usually wellness generally means more costly, maybe more trying to incorporate, but in this case, it's actually the opposite. It's actually more impactful and more beneficial to consider. Michelle? I'd just like to thank you for taking your time that you've been very gracious to share with us. So on behalf of my entire team at Prospect Farms and on behalf of Michelle and Global Wellness Institute, we would deeply like to thank you for your time and consideration today.
Thank you very much, Thomas. And at this point, I'd like to open it up to any questions that our guests have today.
I have a question. Thomas, that was great. I just learned a lot. Wow. I might have missed it in the beginning, but did you speak about your background, how you know all of this?
Thank you. It's a great question. I am very humbly able to share that I am one of many people in our organization that we've been able to fortunately partner with, from chemists, internal chemists here, through brand builders, and incredible manufacturing partners in the process. A lot of the evolution of this industry has been, I think, an ever-evolving and burgeoning consideration. The industry itself, it was only legalized in 2018, so there's not an incredible depth of history that one can lean on. So I was actually very fortunate and very humbled to be in a position to partner with my team and begin this journey ourselves in the summer of 2018, just prior to the Farm Bill and legalization of the industry. So just spending a couple of years and being deeply enveloped into the processes, I think exposure and constant question asking, as simplistic as that might be, I think is powerful, and it shows how much the industry can come, how much any individual can come in just a very short period of time. My background has been in the industry for upwards of 6 years now, in both the limited license markets, prior to the CBD industry and leading into as a foundational consideration, where I was able to work as a director for a medical group in New Hampshire to further surround myself with incredible talent and incredible like-minded individuals with experiences from biology to chemistry, and into a whole other consideration from manufacturing practices as well. So it's just a constant evolution of knowledge, to be quite honest.
Well, it sounds like it's evolving a lot. My other question is, will you be able to provide us with sort of an overview of the products you offer? I don't, how many SKUs there are, what the pricing is. Maybe there's something you can give us that we can share amongst the consulting network.
Oh, we would be delighted to, and we'd be deeply appreciative of the consideration. I think right now we're currently just over 60 total SKUs, and that spans a number of distribution lines from both people and pets, because we took, and I say this tongue in cheek, but I think so often we consider our pets before we do ourselves. So that was a great consideration for us when we thought about what we wanted Prospect Farms to stand to mean. Even though we started our journey here in 2018, we spent 2.5 years simply building out our infrastructure and putting the pieces in place so that we could, when we did come to market, we came to market as a trusted and transparent provider and resource to not only our consuming public, but our partners as well, so that we could be the exact partner that idealistically we want to be and what we should be more specifically, because we tend to act as the first barrier of knowledge and education and regulation and everything that goes in between. But happy to share that. It spans anything from sublingual products to topically applied products in both people and pet categories. So we'd be happy to share that. Price point ranges vary obviously depending on products, whether it's retail focused only, or if it's to support the spa community as an example, because we do provide wholesale only considerations in greater quantity, knowing that the frequency of use and the quantity of use is very different in a back bar scenario versus topical consideration on a nightstand. But we'd be happy to share all that information. We love what we do. I think we believe we're good at what we do, and we're equally competitive at what we do, to make it very synergistic as a truly wonderful offering.
Well, thank you. I'm sure that when you share that, Michelle will make it available through the same channels that will make the video available. So thank you. And I'm going to stop hogging the camera now. Thanks so much, Thomas.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for your questions.
Any other questions? Okay, well, and Thomas, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today. And the recording will be made available shortly. So enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everybody who's listening and participating, and couldn't be more appreciative to be here with you. Thank you.